Hello, my friends. Today I'm going to kind of go in a different direction to show you something that is much easier to see than some of the other things that I've been led to speak about. This one, anybody who is living today can bear witness to it and understand then by the fruits that you see what nation that is speaking of. And then, of course, obviously what that means for the times of the end, because there is an end-time nation that rises, and it's called Mystery Babylon. And I'll show you who Mystery Babylon is based off of what I'm going to show you through these series of screenshots that you're going to see on my phone and what I'll speak of them. So in Romans 1, for instance, Paul gives you a list of things that a fallen away, wicked generation will do. And they bring the judgment onto themselves because they have disdain for God. They want nothing to do with God or anything holy. Thus, they're given over to that mind, which is a reprobate mind, unable to perceive their own destruction even as they're increasing it for themselves. And one of the things that Paul spoke about was you do things that are unnatural, such as natural things make human beings happy because we were created naturally in the form of Adam and Eve, and we were to live a natural life. But things unnatural to that or contrary to that cause, as Paul also said, inconvenience in all other aspects of life. So the first thing that is very easy to recognize, and if you go through YouTube, you'll see hundreds and thousands of tens of thousands of channels of women and men, because the men have also been emasculated to become like women, which Paul also speaks about. You will see tens of thousands of channels all talking about their dating experience. So they get up on their phones or their iPads or laptops, or they put out their webcams or whatever they're going to do to put themselves on view and full of the people, meaning that they have no shame of what they're doing. Another thing Paul spoke about. And they share their experience. And for a period of, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 years, you would think that this online dating stuff made everybody happy, until people have actually experienced the fruit of it, which is now beginning to happen, which is why you find all of these YouTube channels now, most of them speaking about how horrible it is. How, I'm a 35-year-old woman, I have 2 kids, I'm divorced, and I'm on these dating apps, and I go out with a guy, and next thing I know, he quits talking to me, so on and so forth. I'm sure everybody that's listened has at least seen that somewhere in their life. And that is an inconvenience of that woman, because we've gone away from the things of natural. Now, what is natural as far as a man and a woman joining together? Well, a man and a woman, they will meet organically, such as at school or at work. They will see each other face to face without the buffer of technology. School, work, at the gym, at the grocery store, you can organically meet people everywhere. And you judge that person when you meet them, not based purely upon what they look like, because you're physically seeing them, of course, but you're also interacting with them and speaking with them in a way that is different than speaking over a phone or over a computer. The natural giving way to the unnatural. Now, technology was declared that it would come about. In the days of the end, Daniel chapter 12, he speaks of a time where technology and knowledge will increase. I firmly understand that to be technology, the internet. And God uses all of these things for us so that we can benefit from it, those who walk with Him. We're not always going to understand everything, even such as the last couple of videos I've put out about this comet and next Thursday being a circled date. I can't be certain of these things until they actually happen. Why? Because the apostles weren't certain of what was going to happen until it did. And even when it did happen, they still didn't understand until Jesus came back after that and spoke to them. There's nothing new under the sun. Exactly the way that Jesus walked with people 2,000 years ago in the flesh is that same walk today in the spirit. It is of the intentions, the understanding of a teacher who speaks, or somebody who speaks of the things of God, that you will know them. You will know them by what they do, and most importantly now, what they do not do. that they do not profit in any way off of the things of God, else they be cut off from that kingdom and struck dead whenever he returns. All of these things I've spoken about many of times. But when you take away the unnatural, you find that woman who then struggles the rest of her life and gives up on it, becomes depressed and anxious, focuses on it so she loses track of other things in her life, including her own kids. And you end up the unnatural way, causing inconvenience to the woman, which also causes inconvenience to the man, because what is the man supposed to do? Well, the man and the woman meet, they come together, they become married, meaning that there's a stable foundation, then to have children and raise children in a stable environment where there is a helper for each of them. The child is raised with two helpers, both of different qualities between male and female. And then whenever that woman, who is 35, has a husband and a couple of kids, they're going to have marital problems along the way, but rather than giving up on them, the natural is to try to fix them, to try to get past them, to try to reconcile, because God is about reconciliation. And in a marriage, he will put reconciliation in that marriage. But if you give up on it, like we've given up on the Word of God, it causes these inconveniences to pour out. And that's why you see all these YouTube and TikTok and Instagram videos and Twitter videos, all these things of now single women trying to date in their 30s and 40s that cannot find anybody suitable. And it also then drives the women and the men to have different standards that nobody, no human, could ever actually meet. So when they do find somebody that is compatible with them, that they could marry and who would accept them, they will reject them in favor of one who will also reject them. Because this is a circular pattern. A reprobate mind is circular in its thoughts. It cannot go outside of the circle. So it remains trapped inside of the paradigm of always pointing to what? Unhappiness. You see all of these trans women and trans men and people going through gender-affirming care and all of these other things. Men going to the point where they try to transition or believe themselves transitioning into a woman. So they will wear tampons and pads in the backside, pouring ketchup and other things down there. I've literally seen videos like this before, in order to appear as something that they're not, because they cannot be that. And what does that cause that individual? It causes them inconvenience. Would it not be easier for the man to go through life as a man rather than transforming into a woman? The first step of transforming into a woman is being emasculated, meaning that a man loses their natural protection, their natural chivalrous nature, their natural fatherhood and the desire to be a father, and they trade that natural for something unnatural, which eventually leads to transsexuals, people who try to fit into the clothes, the body of another type that they can never fit into. It's inconvenient for life. You got to go through operation after operation, counseling services, take medication, do all of these crazy things just to appear as something you can never be. It is inconvenient to live as such. And you look here at another article. It's a culture of unhappiness. Depression is the leading cause of disability in the United States for ages 15 to 44. Depression. Why are people depressed? Young people especially face challenges. Suicide is the third leading cause of death for young people. When you see young people engage in these things, it doesn't just begin with them. It began because their parents also did it. And what was bad, began bad for the parent, fully comes in bloom as completely bad then for the child, because the child has no roots and no foundation. It never been taught or recognized love. Thus, it thinks it loves, but it doesn't. There's no form of love in this generation of people who has been given over to this mind. They live the love like you see Hollywood live, where they talk, oh, my prayers for this person, oh, my thoughts are with this family, oh, they're such a good person, look at what they're doing. It's a form of love, but it's not love. It's more based upon lust. There's no actual love in any of them. They've never recognized it, because what began as a bad fruit turns into a rotten fruit by the end of 2 generations. It begins as bad, ends as completely desolate, essentially. You can eat a banana it's got a little bit of darkness on it. Nothing wrong with that. But who's going to pick up a banana and eat it that's completely black and shriveled? Nobody's going to eat those things. That's what it's like to go through one generation to the next of a bad fruit. It eventually completely spoils, and the only thing that's left to do with it is to harvest it and throw it away, which is the wheat from the tares, the separation. Jesus separates those fruits which are completely rotten and unfit for consumption. So why are we unhappy? Why are we depressed? Why are we anxious? For the world, these things all happen because everything about their life has been made inconvenient for them. Abortion. And then this, I brought specifically this little article up on here because this is somebody who is gung-ho for believing killing babies is a good thing. They will do what is evil and call it good. An abortion is a medical procedure that ends a pregnancy. It is basic health care need for millions of women, girls, and others who can become pregnant. An estimated 1 in 4 pregnancies end in an abortion every year. This is what brings ultimate judgment to people, because once you go after the children, God then does not continue on with that process. You can harm yourself as an adult. The Lord will not judge a nation for that. Right away, at least. It's given some reprieve, some time to turn and repent from those things. But whenever you start attacking the children, that's when God has enough, and he doesn't allow it to happen, because the children, according to the world, are innocent still in his eye, just like his own children who have been born again are innocent in his eye. Not because, oh, God is so crazy and so insolent that he looks at us and sees Jesus Christ himself. No, God sees you for who you are. He sees Jesus for who he is because he built him. That is God. He made the flesh be himself and come as Jesus. He doesn't see Jesus when he looks at you. He sees you for who you are. And the aura, the recognition that Jesus had, that is what is in you, not some form of Jesus that appears to deceive the Father. No, he sees you for who you are. He knew you from before you were even formed in the womb. He doesn't see Jesus when he looks at you. That's one of those popular things that this fallen away church will say. He sees you for who you are. And the reason they say this is because they can't see themselves, and they are guilty in their own mind, in their own spirit. The guilt is still on them, so they can't physically look at themselves because they don't want to see what they see when they do. So they'll see Jesus in place of themselves. That's the reality of why they say these things, but that's going off on a different term. Whenever you speak about abortion, again, you're speaking about something that's inconvenient, because what the children bring. Children are the greatest tool for teaching an adult. If you're not around children at all, even be teaching them or work with them in some field of a hospital, nursing-wise, something like that. Anybody who is around children is taught something by children, because you can then remember back when you were a child yourself and understand why it is they're doing the things that they're doing. You cannot help when you're around a child but to feel a certain way about them that is going to be different than an adult. So the fact that mothers are supposed to have children, fathers are supposed to be with the mothers, and they are supposed to come together in union to make a third, which is one in them, that family unit, it is inconvenient to go against that. Thus, abortion is but a fruit, symptom, a side effect of the original falling away, which is the inconvenience that comes from that. This is also talking here about suicides, and this is specifically suicides amongst transgenders. So you had one inconvenience, and now I'm going to give you a fruit of that even further past that. In other words, once the fruit is made inconvenient, given a reprobate mind, inconvenience will layer on top of inconvenience, which eventually leads ultimately to the death. There is no way out of it once you're trapped in that circle, unless it is you would turn to the Lord. But how do you turn to the Lord whenever everything that is thought about the Lord from your perspective is foolishness? Well, that's the mystery of God, because nobody has that answer why God will look at somebody and deem them worthy to change them. None of us will know that answer. But I can say that when you begin down a path of inconveniences, more inconveniences will come from that path. And the reason why transgender people are more suicidal than people who are not transgender is because it is another layer of inconvenience added on, because they're already living a life of inconvenience. And thus, by living inconvenience, which is the unnatural, everything then leads to depression, anxiety, anger, frustration, violence, everything that Paul spoke of. So you look at the mental and behavioral disorders. It accounts for 26% of the different disorders that you see in the hospitals. Musculoskeletal disease is 14%, neurological sense organ conditions 13%, infectious disease is 8%, so on and so forth. Mental and behavioral disorders have become the most prevalent, the most common diagnosis of everybody living in America as a whole. There is godly anxiety that you will have. There is godly depression that you will have. God will give you those things because you begin to recognize the world around you like a little child first beginning to see. But those things are eased away as you walk, and God makes you more comfortable with experiencing the things around you. Even though you see the world for what it is, you have the comfort that the Lord is with you and guiding you through this thing. It's called a trial, a tribulation. But without God, the world has none of these. It doesn't have God to fall back on to learn these things. Thus, all of their cares and concerns are fixated on the world itself and the things in the world. And now I'll just read Romans 1. For this cause God gave them up to a vile affection. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one towards another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whispers, backbiters, haters of God, disrespectful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them who do them. And this culture that has this reprobate mind, who is Paul speaking to here? He's speaking to the Romans. Which the Romans, over the course of the last 2,000 years, guess where that turned into? You guessed it, Mystery Babylon, the nation that we currently sit in, which is part Israel, because God's children are here, along with the West, but it's mostly Mystery Babylon, which is Romans 1. And this also encompasses Canada, Europe, all the Western nations, all fall under the same Romans 1, because the same root that grew them all, Rome, can be found amongst all of the Western countries. So you see, God has joined everything together in either Romans 1 or Israel. And there's no more division between peoples other than that. God came to divide, to cut in half with a sword. And thus you look in the world and you can see one is either like the Romans or one is like Israel, who lives amongst all the entire world. And you can see all of these things manifest just by scrolling through YouTube. So it's very easy to recognize and understand that the same fruit that Paul described is the same fruit that everybody living who has that reprobate mind is consuming daily. And where does that lead to? The banana that's completely black and rotten, and there's nothing you can do with it except throw it into the fire and burn it. Exactly what is coming upon this people in this world, and it's coming without delay. God bless.